Good morning! No light show today either. Great sadness. But what are you gonna do? Alright, so let's talk a little bit about bad code versus different code. And what do I mean by that? Well, so generally you will find that there's only really one true metric of what is good code and what is bad code. And I'm gonna shamelessly steal this entire thing and say that it's measured by what the fucks per minute. And for those of you who are not indoctrinated in the ways of programming and haven't been baptized in, well, Jolt Cola basically here in Sweden and so forth and so forth, that basically means that you will at no point, for the most part, feel that somebody else's code is as nice as your own code. Sometimes you will. Sometimes you absolutely will. But mostly you're spending your time trying to read code that somebody else wrote. Or sometimes even yourself. I mean, I've been there 100 times where I read some code and I go, what is this? Like, this is horrible. And then I look at the commit history, and it turns out that, hey, it was actually me who wrote this bullshit. So that's a great thing to keep yourself humble. And actually, it's something I highly recommend you do. Save every piece of software you write, like if you're allowed to, like at a private repo. Like I have, like if you want to go and check out the stuff I did in school, you can go to my GitHub repo and just look at the mess. Because like, if you ever, like, this is really healthy. At least I want to believe that it's healthy, and it brings tears to my eyes how painful it is. But if you ever think that, oh, you know, I'm getting pretty good at this, and you start to think that you're better than somebody else, just go back and look at that mess that you made. Like, you can't even just go back a year. Like, even a year will be healthy for you. That's a great tip to stay humble. Anywho, so the idea is basically that you will, for the most part, just spend your time trying to figure out what the code is doing. And the thing is that there is a large amount of people, that I argue anyway, who get kind of caught up in prettiness, in style, and they have what I call a mental itch. And what I mean by the mental itch is that you look at a piece of software and you actually don't think, you start thinking about whether or not this code is well written, is it well made, is it well structured, like is the overall piece of software well built. Because there is a difference. There's a difference between code that is well built and code that is pretty. Now, you should absolutely, if you can, aim for both. But I can tell you from experience that honestly, most of the time when you have a code review, and for those of you who don't know what a code review is, basically what you usually do in software development when you work as a team is that I write some features, like I build some code, and then I submit it for review by my colleagues. So that they can, you know, because it's very bad if you only have a single developer who knows how something works. It's very important because somebody may have a style of writing or a way of solving problems that is suboptimal or so forth. So it's always good to have another pair of eyes on something. So what virtually happens is that most code reviews actually just boils down to people commenting on, oh, maybe that variable name should be different, or maybe that function name should be different, blah, 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 blah. And that's pretty good. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people who believe that that's actually really low value. It's really low value. I mean, if you put three programmers in the same room and you ask them, that function name there, what do you think about it? You're gonna get at least two different opinions on how that function is gonna be named. And my question becomes very quickly, is that really that important? Isn't it more important that the complexity of the function, let's say it's a very simple function and you're going for the release speed, then maybe you don't have to have unit tests. But let's say it's a very, very critical piece of software, like authentication to the system, then, you know, a more useful comment would be, hey, you forgot to test these cases. Have you accounted for these things? Are there unit tests? That type of stuff. That's, you know, that's the semantic difference between, in my opinion, between good code, or rather bad code and pretty code. Because I could have, in theory, the most perfectly named function in the world, or I could have the line formatting really nice, and I could have it written in a way that is perfectly falling into the flavor of, or rather the taste of the person reading my code. But I can also write really horrible code, even though I had very nice pretty code. And see, that's kind of where I'm going with this little talk of mine. I want you to start thinking about, less about your own preferred style of writing code. Like, if when I read a piece of software somebody else wrote and I see, hey, this is not really how if I wrote this, I wouldn't write it in this style. But that's not important, because I can still understand what's happening. That's like trying to correct people who are speaking English because they have a southern accent. Or do you see what I'm saying? Like, you still understand the language. There's no ambiguity. There's no loss of information. There's really only your own preferred way of doing something and your own mental itch that you are trying to basically scratch. It's about you. This entire thing is about you, and it shouldn't be about you. It should be about the quality of the software. So I'm gonna end on that note and give you this advice. At least this is what I try to do. I try to respect my colleagues' right to solve the problem in the fashion that they want. And the only time I say anything about the software is if I see that they forgot something, to check something, or if the code might cause a problem in some way. And only if they truly, and no, I've never worked with a programmer that does this, only if the code is truly horrible and massive will I comment and say, hey, maybe you should rewrite this. But for the most part, I let people have their own way of writing things, because I believe that, you know, we all have our own style of doing stuff.